second. Right, I think we're almost on the dot of 5:30. We're going to start on the dot today, and I'm going to leave early because I'm not brilliant today, so I'm going to try and nip away about 10 to 6. So if people have got questions for me afterwards, where I'd normally hang around and answer them, just email me, and I'm very happy to answer any emails. So we've got 2 guest speakers today who are going to talk to us about their journey to the masters that they're currently doing, and talking about their jobs as assistant psychologists and how they came by those jobs. Well, just a bit of, I'll just do a bit of housekeeping while we're doing that. We did actually have 4 people lined up today, but unfortunately one person's had issues with her family and another person's quite ill, so they can't make it today, but they're very happy to come another time. Remind you that we have got 2 international students who are on doctoral training at Manchester coming to speak to us in February, I think. I can't remember. It's on the Blackboard community space anyway. So for those of you who are international students who I can't tell a great lot to, these 2 students should be able to help out with these trainees. So hopefully we'll get a little bit more information from them about how you can go about applying for doctoral training. Okay, I think we might just give it a few minutes to kick off. So the other things we've got lined up, we've got now 3 psychological wellbeing practitioners going to speak to us online in March. We have a neuropsychologist and a consultant psychologist coming to speak to us in November. We have so I think I've got one other thing actually in December that might not be up there. See if I can remember. And I'm going to also. Has everyone found the Blackboard folder? Yeah. Everyone that's here. Is anyone Cogneuro here? Right. Oh yeah. Okay. So you'll find out anyway. I'll make sure that you know about it. But anyone else that's Cogneuro, you don't have all of the same stuff at the same speed as everyone else. But I do feed it through your course director, and you should get it by email. And master students, I do try and update it, but if it's not updated quickly enough, then give me a shout and I'll try and make sure it's updated a little bit quicker. Hi. So the session is being recorded if anyone wants to revisit it. I'm working in cahoots with a second year student developing some Mentimeter slides to evaluate the club, but we haven't got our heads together quickly enough to get it done for today. But anyone accessing this session from today on will need to go through the Mentimeter slides in order to access the session to actually give an evaluation. So if you were to access a different session using the slides on Blackboard, you'll be going through Mentimeter, which is kind of a live link to let me know what you wanted from the session and whether you got it or not. Hi. Yeah, come in. I did that at a meeting today. There was a meeting that I thought was going to be really, really, really informal, and it was in University Place, and it looked like a proper teacher. It looked like someone was teaching, so I was thinking, and all the other staff looked really young as well, so I thought I was going into the wrong session. So this is a great turnout for session 2. So without further ado, I'm going to hand across to Kemi, who is going to talk to us about her journey, and I am probably just going to sit here if that's all right, because otherwise we're going to not going to have enough seats for people.
So I guess I'm just going to talk a bit about my journey so far, so mainly how I got my assistant psychology job. So just academic wise, so I did psychology at A-levels, and I also did it at GCSE as well, because I've just always been interested. From when I did it at GCSE, I thought I might as well do it at A-levels as well. And then I studied it at undergraduate, but I did that at De Montfort in Leicester. So just regarding how I got the assistant psychology job, so this was actually the only assistant psychology job I applied for, and luckily I got it. So I applied right after I graduated as well, so yeah, in the summer months of after graduation. So some of the work experience that I did, this was all done during university, and it was all volunteer stuff that I did. and I found out about a lot of the roles through, we had like careers events, I'm guessing this uni would do that as well, so it was all through those I found out about the volunteer roles. So I did stuff like mental health recovery worker, and I was a youth worker and a peer mentor. So these are all things that I just try to manage alongside my studies. So then regarding the application process for the job I had, so it was a private assistant psychology job that I had, it wasn't within the NHS. So I just had to do a CV and my cover letter. So the cover letter was just, I guess, about the job specification and how my skills and qualifications linked to the job role. And I also included like non-psychology experience, because I didn't have any paid psychology experience before that job. So I just also wrote about, because I was a dispenser in a pharmacy, I wrote about how the skills from that applied to the role as well. And yeah, also within my uni, the careers team helped a lot with the preparation. I'm guessing the careers team here could do that as well. So then for the interview, they gave me, I think it was like a week before, I was told to create a presentation and information leaflet. So the job role was around neurodiversity, so the presentation and information leaflet was about ADHD. So then in the interview I had to present the presentation and then give them the information leaflet as well. So then in the interview it was just me, the clinical psychologist, and then the previous assistant that I took the job of. So those are some of the questions that they asked me. So just asked why I applied for the role, so just talking about my interest in psychology and stuff like that. And then another important question that they usually ask in these sort of things, possibly about supervision, and then general team working questions as well. And yeah, I was given the job on the same day of the interview. I was the last one they interviewed, and I was driving home when they called me to give me the job, so yeah. So the job role I had, it was regarding neurodiversity, so working with people with ADHD, autism and dyslexia, those sort of conditions. So I'd be doing psychometric tests, and then I also had a caseload of child therapy clients as well, and then just general admin work as part of the role. And then other things I had to do was just create clinical documents as well. So I guess my general advice for when it comes to applying for these roles is, even if you feel like your experience is limited, because I felt like mine was, it was only volunteer stuff during uni, I'd say still try, because you never know. If you can apply the skills you have, I guess even if it's limited experience, it still could work out for you. And yeah, just keep on trying and just believe in yourself, and then utilise the careers team in this uni as well. So I worked in the AP role for 2 years, and I just thought I wanted to try something different, I wanted to change, because I did try to apply for the doctorate last year but wasn't successful. So I just thought maybe I should do something different. I don't have much research experience, so that's why I chose the masters that I'm doing, and also I have interest in neuropsychology as well. And then at the moment I'm also working as a children's support worker, and I'm also a specialist mentor at the moment as well, so that's just working with students and helping them overcome any barriers they may face at university related to their mental health conditions. So yeah, these are things I'm doing at the moment. Yeah, any questions? Yeah.
Do you have like any recommendations on like where to work? Like I saw like on the first slide you were saying how you did so and so, and there are a lot of volunteer positions. So do you know any places? Like the only one I know is Mind. Do you know anything else like Mind, like to volunteer at?
Because mine were all in Leicester, I don't know for the ones in Manchester, but do you know, is there any careers events that are happening that could...
I mean, the careers centre should be able to talk you through that. There are 2 mental health trusts, big mental health trusts in Manchester. There's Greater Manchester Mental Health Trust and Pennine Care Trust. I don't wonder if I need to be close to the mic for this. Greater Manchester Mental Health Trust and Pennine Care Trust, and they both have Pennine, Pennine, and they both have volunteer pages. So I would go on there, see what there is. We did an exercise last year where we actually downloaded a couple of sort of volunteer opportunities from those trusts, and there were some that were really, really interesting. So there was one at that time in an addictions team, which was around kind of, so although it wasn't clinical psychology as such, you're working with people with addictions, like one-on-one, and helping them work through things like managing housing applications, things like that, which is great experience. Anything that you can do like that is great experience. I got an email through from, I can't remember what the organisation's called. I'll pop it onto Blackboard, because there is an organisation in Manchester that is a volunteering hub, and they do have some things that would help you get the experience to then get the volunteering work that you might want, that would take you that step closer. So I'd always say take incremental steps to getting where you want to be. I've kind of got a question that is related to that though, because which of those experiences and why was the most useful for your applications for assistant psychologist?
Maybe I think the SEN teaching assistant role helped, but I wrote a lot about my dispenser job. I wrote about
dispenser
job? In the pharmacy. I wrote about the skills from that one quite a lot, because that was the job I did the longest.
Oh, right, okay.
What does SEN stand for? Sorry.
Special educational needs.
Was that also a volunteer role? Sorry.
No, that was paid.
Yeah. So there are there's one called Milk something or other.
Milk Education.
Yes, is that what it is?
There's Zen Educate as well.
It's what?
The Zen Educate and Milk Education.
Yeah, it's Milk that I was aware of, yeah, thank you. So there are some agencies around that recruit students quite often actually, so there's been a couple of undergrads and master's students that I've known that have volunteered with them. And, well, not volunteered actually, you get paid quite well, and the work's really interesting, you get to pick up a lot.
They're a good volunteer place. I did some volunteering with them.
Nice. Mood swings.
It's called Mood Swings. It's near Shoredale if anyone needs something.
Mood
close.
swings?
It's like helpline calls, and you can do support one-to-one.
Yeah.
And they're very flexible, so if you're not having any calls going through, they let you do your uni work there.
Yeah. Childline, a lot of students I've known have worked for Childline, and sometimes I think a student I was talking to the other day worked for Childline as a volunteer for most of the time, and then has become a supervisor in Childline. So it's a paid role now. So there are lots of ways in which, and that's amazing clinical work. The amount of things that you can talk about to do with risk and risk management and managing and being resilient, managing your own emotions, managing challenge, all of those things, these sorts of jobs are amazing. To build up your own arsenal as well, not just for your CVs, but actually on a personal level, amazing.
And you can also check on Indeed as well for jobs. That's where I found the most recent ones I'm doing.
I have a question regarding your master's. So is it at University of Manchester, I'm assuming?
Yeah, just started that.
This is more, I've had some contradictory info about the masters, so I was wondering, are you like home fee?
Yeah.
So is it self-funded or not?
You can get student finance as well, postgraduate loan.
That's what I've been told, that it would be a self-funding.
Yeah, so it's self-funding, just like your undergraduate degrees.
Also, it's not like you just have to pay up front.
Well, it's the same kind of finances, so you can get a postgraduate loan, like Cami was saying. So you can get, I think you can get fees from a loan as well, can you, Cami?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, international fees are huge compared to home fees. They're about 3 times the size.
Does the CAP Masters courses fund the clinical associate psychologist? That one. So that could be interesting.
Everyone, this is Michael. He's on the Masters in Clinical and Health Psychology. He can
How you doing, guys? So there's like a Masters that exists, and it's clinical associate psychologist.
Yeah, the CAP.
Yeah, so that one I think you get paid to do that.
I have seen that. I've looked around, and it's pretty much nowhere near the northwest. All of them are very down south. They do placements.
There's 2 in Scotland, but I don't know about England.
Any other?
you.
That's okay. Any other? Yeah.
Regarding the volunteer experience that you gathered during uni, did you do like an integrated placement, a placement year? I was hoping you could give some more details about like how you did that alongside your studies.
So I didn't have a placement year. These were all things that I did maybe once a week, and because there was one. I think the first one that I did was the recovery worker one. I probably did that for like half a year. So it'd only be as and when I had time, because it was quite flexible. So just like once a week, twice a week, whenever I had time. Yeah.
Or private company.
work for?
It's based in Suffolk. It's called the Psychology Consultancy, so it's not near here.
Some of the Elysium Healthcare, I think the Elysium Group, they are a private company that do neuro rehab, some older people's stuff. They're good to look out for AP posts. They do actually post in NHS jobs now, though, most of these private companies. But you might get the odd one that just goes through Indeed or something like that.
I just have a question, like looking back what you've done throughout your undergrad, would you have done as many volunteer roles or just stick to one and do it for longer? Like, I guess like in terms of skills, would you say one of them was more appropriate or?
For the job I had, I guess the special educational needs one was the most appropriate because I was working in neurodiversity and then I was dealing with that in the job, but I think I'm happy I did all of them because it gave me different experiences and different skills and made me realise what areas I liked and what I didn't, so yeah.
2 questions.
Okay.
First, did you volunteer during graduate?
Yeah, I did.
How did you find it?
Tough because I also had a part-time job as well. I was a dispenser, but I made time for everything. I don't know how I did it, but it was tough. It was tough.
You're saying that it sounds like a lot of your volunteering, you could drop things if you needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't have to commit as much to the volunteer stuff, so it was just more as and when I was available. Yeah.
Second question, why did you choose to do a master's instead of as a research assistant job?
I think when I was checking for the research assistant jobs, many of them needed masters, so that was part of the reason why I couldn't really apply for them. So yeah, that's the main reason.
Do you want to say something about your masters, Kemi? Because at the University of Manchester there are kind of 2 or 3 relevant masters programmes. So one's the one Kemi's on, and then there's a masters in clinical and health psychology and a masters in health psychology that is also one of the postgraduate programmes here. So you're on the cognitive
neuroscience and neuropsychology. So yeah, we've just started at the moment, but we've started off with learning about R, which is it's to do with coding. It involves coding for data analysis. So that's what we've been doing mainly at the moment, and then just going through some like qualitative research methods. And yeah, that's mainly what we've been doing at the moment because we've just started. So yeah.
So all of the masters programs, when people ask me which is the best masters to do, I would go with what you're really interested in, really, because you're going to get a lot of the same skills from these master's qualifications. And as Kemi said, one of the main reasons probably for doing it. So you will get knowledge from it, which is great because that gives you a head up. But also one of the other things it gives you is that research experience. And in the evaluation of the students that we had on our cohort last year, the thing that came out the strongest from their evaluation was they felt more confident in research skills and being able to answer that part of the research skills bit on assistant psychology and for PhDs, that they could say that they have that skill.
Yeah. Any other? Yeah.
So, do you feel like you need like a master's to get onto the clinical psychology doctorate, even if it's not relevant to like directly clinical psychology? Do you think you still need it, or does that make it easier to get onto the doctorate course, do you think?
I guess I don't know because I'm not on the doctorate myself, but I guess I'm doing the masters because I think it might help me just with my research skills. But I know people that have got on the doctorate without having masters. Some people have just done a few AP jobs and support work, so I don't think it's needed, but in my case I wanted it for the research skills. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
So like on what platforms did you look for assistant jobs?
I checked the one I got. I found it on Reed, and Indeed and LinkedIn were places that I looked. Yeah. Any other questions?
This is one of the reasons that it does pay you to get on Indeed jobs, even though it can be quite irritating getting all their emails. Like if you start following people, people will share jobs that they see that might be of interest. So it's definitely worth having that sort of network, even if you never contact anyone that you've followed. It's good having that network and watching what people share in terms of jobs.
I'm sorry, I know I've asked a lot of questions. You know, in terms of your AP role, were you quite local to that area?
Yeah, I was.
Like, because I was just wondering, because I feel like, once again, I've looked a lot about AP roles,
Yeah.
and they're down south.
Yeah, I'm
So-
from down south, so
Oh.
yeah.
Sorry, not to sound like a hater. But it's
That's
just
fine, that's fine.
how, I was wondering if you have any knowledge of how much of the travel is too much, because I feel like a lot of AP roles I've seen on AHS, they require you to be driving,
Oh, as in you need to be driving as part
have a
of the-
driving license, and some even say they want you to have like a car.
I think it depends on the job, because for the one I applied for, it didn't require me to have a car, and my journey time was 30 minutes. So I'd say I don't think I could travel more than an hour for work. So I feel like an hour would be too much.
Like an hour one way.
Yeah, an hour one way. So yeah, because I didn't need to. The only place I needed to drive to was home and to the job. I didn't have to drive as part of the job. So I think maybe it just depends on the job.
Thank you.
So the contributors that couldn't make it tonight are both assistant psychologists in the Greater Manchester area and have had 2 or 3 roles in the Greater Manchester area. So, and I know that there are roles. So I don't know whether it's you've just had unlucky little
Probably.
spate of looking, but the roles definitely come up. And I've said to you before, it's quite useful going for ones that are sort of maybe not as many days as you might want, or it might not be in the area that you want, because once you build up a reputation somewhere, then you're likely to get more days somewhere, and sometimes bits of money become available from maternity leaves or gaps in employment between other posts. So you can sometimes find little bits of jobs that it's worth going for, and then you can build that up later.
Yeah. Any more questions? Yeah.
How was the process like applying for the assistant psychologist role? In a sense, like, did you have multiple interviews or did you just have one?
So it was just the one interview.
Okay.
Yeah, that was it. It was just the creating the presentation and information leaflet, and yeah, just the one interview.
And you only applied for one role?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And another question. For applying for the doctorate, how difficult is that process?
I think maybe I just found it hard knowing how they want us to answer the questions and how I could apply my skills to the questions that they were asking. I think that was just what made it difficult. I guess I'll never know what they're looking for, so yeah, I think that's the main thing.
So the doctoral applications that are of such a high standard now. So people coming in, I wonder now whether I would have got on. So there are some really amazing candidates for the doctorate. But sometimes those candidates don't change their experience between one application and the next, but the way that they've written their statement has changed. So another benefit of getting an AP post or spending time with clinical psychologists is that they've maybe been part of the application process themselves, maybe they've even been on the panel at some point, and they can help look through your statement as well. Your references are really important, so it's not like, when you get a reference, well, I get loads of reference requests at the minute from third years who have moved on to other things, and basically they just want me to answer about 5 questions, which are very impersonal and like end up with, would you employ this person again? But for the doctorate in clinical psychology, they're really quite in-depth. I have 3 or 4 sections to fill out about somebody's research ability, their ability, like all sorts of personal characteristics and all of those things. So you want to make sure you've got a really good referee as well by the time you do your doctoral application. I'm sure yours was brilliant. But sometimes it is a case of getting that bit more experience because you talk a little bit more, with a bit more authority about what it is that you've done. And you just know more stuff after a year, basically. Any more questions for Kemi before I line up Lawrence?
What kind of question they ask you about? What question they expect you to
For the doctorate?
doctor application?
For the doctoral application,
Yeah.
I would suggest that you look on the website for the doctoral application. You'll be able to look at an application form on there. And then also maybe when our international students come, and we will have trainees coming to speak to us as well. So that hopefully you can have a look at that and hear those people.
I'm sorry.
That's fine.
I was looking around like master applications for University of Manchester, and I know at least for the health and clinical one, they ask you to kind of do like a proposal, like a little research thing. I was wondering, did you have to do that?
No, we just had to write a personal statement. Just
Yeah. Insider information, that's no longer going to be on the application.
Oh, right. Thank you. Because I was going to ask, how do you go about that? Because I feel like that sounds so tricky to think of something that's not been in the literature.
So that's been removed basically because the university has moved to a centralised admissions process, so our administrators don't know how to judge those.
Right.
So we've had to move, sorry guys, we've had to move to a different way of looking at applications. So that won't be part of it. Okay. Thank you very much.
That's okay. Hi everyone, I'm Laura. So I'm also on the master's course with Kemi doing cognitive neuroscience and neuropsychology, and I'm just going to tell you a wee bit about what led to me becoming an assistant psychologist and then why I chose to leave it to pursue a master's, and hopefully it helps a bit. I'll answer what I can, but just to let you know from the start, I didn't do any of this experience in England. I did it in Northern Ireland, but because it's in the UK, I imagine quite a lot still applies, because obviously there's still a doctorate course in those universities, but I maybe can't tell you where it's good to apply directly here. Okay, so my academic experience was I did an A-level in psychology, and just decided, the degree in that, liked it, that was all it was, no knowledge of what a clinical psychologist was, I just really liked it. I then did my degree in Queen's University Belfast. Don't know if anyone would know it, but it's just uni there. And I'm currently, as I said, an MRes student in cognitive neuroscience and neuropsychology. And my work experience is a bit different than Kemi's. So when I was in second year of uni, my second year was entirely in lockdown. So my original plan was I was going to do a placement year, like I'm sure most of you are going to, but my opportunity for that was completely taken away. Everyone I tried to contact said they didn't feel like they were capable of taking in a student that year, which meant nearly, I think my whole year group, bar 2 people, got placement, and I wasn't as lucky. So I started, a bit of panic set in, and I started looking for work experience very quickly. So in my second year I applied to become a support worker in a supported living scheme for learning disabilities. Now I had something called a relief contract, which is the same as, I think here it gets referred to as a bank contract or a 0 hours contract. So I would usually get a text at the start of the week saying, we have this shift available, can you cover? And it was up to me what I could take. Now, if anyone's worked in any of these kind of environments, there are always shifts. There's always people leaving, there's always annual leave. So I would say I probably worked part-time hours at least the whole time through uni, so I felt like I was able to claim the experience I had because I did so much every day. I knew I was there every week, which then led into me graduating uni. So during my third year I picked up a healthcare assistant job through an agency again, a 0 hours contract. It makes sense in theme here. And the reason I went for this was because, well, for one, I wasn't qualified to do anything else yet. I hadn't finished my degree. I wanted more patient experience. I wanted to know as much as I could. So this agency gave me the opportunity to work in mental health wards and medical wards. So as much as it might sound like if you're doing psychology, housing, medical feels relevant, you would be surprised the people you meet. Like clinical health psychology, what these guys are learning is very important because you can meet a lot of people who will have a psychological condition as a result of their physical health condition, that's led to situational depression and things. So I felt like it was really valuable to learn, and I I was probably a bit pushy. I took every opportunity I had. If there was a psychiatrist there, I was like, hey, do you want to teach me something? And then if there were junior doctors around, I used to just say, oh, do you need me help? Do you mind showing me this?
I used to pester nurses in the mental health team to teach me it, and they were willing to. I really do think that's a good thing, because you know, it's like that thing, if you don't ask you don't get, you know, and people are usually, especially people in healthcare, are always so kind. They want to teach you and they want to help you, and I always just would tell the staff I was working with, and especially in the mental health wards, I felt like I learned so much, and even the sort of like vital patient care skills, you know, what's an appropriate way to talk to someone, what's an empathetic view. And then it also means when, say, you get to a higher point of view, when you're not with the patient every day and you only see them once a week, say, you know what they're doing day to day because you've been there, you've been sitting beside them, you know that they spend a very long day, maybe sat in bed, especially in a mental health ward. They might spend a lot of days incapable of doing anything, doing medication, having a lack of purpose in their life, and it's really good. Well, I found it was really good to be able to know that, so whenever I was in my assistant psychologist position, I could sort of visualise where the service users were coming from and what do they need from me to bring home with them, what would help them, because as much as you could see a service user at a clinic, say, you know, you're not seeing them every week, you're seeing them for an hour out of that week, and yeah, I think it really helped me be able to understand what they were seeing when they went home, if that makes sense. So I was doing that until I graduated. I actually got a team leader position in the first supported living scheme I worked in, which was great, but it was actually part-time, so I carried on doing the healthcare assistant role through the agency along with the team leader position, because some weeks there were shifts to pick up, some weeks there weren't, and it was just a case of money coming in. But I really enjoyed it, so it was good. I just loved being with people all day. That was just for me. Some people might not like it. I loved it. So it worked really well for me. And by team leader, it was the case of, in this specific supported living scheme, it was for young women with learning disabilities, so it was age anywhere from 18 to 65. It was quite a broad range, and on a team leader shift I was essentially responsible for the staff on that shift and the service users on shift, administering the medication, and essentially if anything kind of went wrong, I kind of had to sort it, depending if the manager was there. But in these sort of environments, you tend to find you have sort of nursing style shifts, so it's not a 9 to 5, it's usually 8 AM to 8 PM, and usually management are there from 9 to 5, so you'd have hours of the day where it would have just been me, which is intimidating at the start, and then I don't know, you get used to it bit by bit, if that makes sense. And weirdly, I got used to it when disaster struck, because when disaster struck, you just kind of have to sort it, you know, and if there's no one around to help and nobody's answering the on-call phone, you have to figure it out. And weirdly, that was such valuable experience, because I genuinely have faced disaster since and never felt panic or stress, which means I think clearer, don't feel panicked by disasters. I mean, I want to give you an example, but I don't want to scare you. Like on one of, when I was just became a team leader, I had a service user who had a seizure, but the seizure went on for an hour and a half. I had to get an ambulance crew in, and this was a woman with a learning disability, and about 6 other women with learning disabilities witnessed it. So you can imagine the distress of someone you live with seeing that, how upset you were going to be. So you can imagine me at age 21 with trying to help this woman, trying to console these other women who've just witnessed it, and then the staff who had also not witnessed before, you know, looking for like guidance. It was really intense for like first month, and I'm not saying that's what's going to happen to you, but things like this, they do happen. I got told by my manager that she had never seen someone with such bad luck in their first year, so that was that. But they were all very, very shaping skills, even things like, you know, working in with a multidisciplinary team, corresponding with social workers, with speech and language therapists, all people that you would work with in clinical psychology. I meant I was in meetings with them, annual reviews, okay, we set this goal for this person, have we met it? No. Kind of give a better view of even how the working world works. And then from this job, the reason I got the interview, when Kemi said something, it reminded me of how it happened. I applied for a job I was nowhere near qualified for. I applied for a Band 5 associate position, which I was not qualified for, and the person who was, I guess, reading the applications sent me an email back and said, oh hi, yeah, sorry, you don't actually have the qualifications for that, but can I hold on to your CV because I have another job in mind? and I wasn't going to be like no, so I was like, yeah, of course, keep my CV, that's fine. So she kept my CV, and within a week she sent me an interview for an assistant psychologist post, so that was very exciting. So my assistant psychologist job that I did get was in a brain injury rehabilitation centre. So it was quite a unique position. It was very different than I've heard other assistant psychologists posts be. My position, I probably spent, I want to say 80% of my time with the service users, where I've heard a lot of assistant psychologist posts being mostly admin related things, or a different variety of things. But anyone I had spoken to said they were quite surprised how much time I would be with the service users. So in this case, it was set up people would come in for group sessions 2 times a day, so for a morning session and an afternoon session. These sessions were very different from, taking someone from a psychological therapy, or sitting doing a Sudoku with somebody, or just essentially the facility was focused on doing cognitively stimulating tasks, so anything that's focusing your brain to work hard. Things like the fun ones would have been like Sudoku or Wordle, or things that really do make you sit and think, and it made it a bit more fun whenever, because sometimes you deal with quite serious topics. But in terms of psychology things, I would have done psychological interventions. An example of this would be a behavioural activation diary. So that is an intervention for somebody suffering from a lack of motivation. Usually I would imagine it's in relation to someone with depression. It's one of the key components of that. So this entailed creating sort of a diary template approved by my supervisor, who I would then meet with this person once a week, and I would sit with him and plan out his week, because his issue was just really finding it hard to find a purpose week to week, which is hard, because especially if you've had quite a extreme injury, your life does change completely, which is really hard, and it's hard not to sit and find something to do every day, especially when you're used to working your whole life. So this was a case of, okay, what will we do today? Oh, we'll sit and watch TV. Okay, well, what will we do before we sit and watch TV? Will we help out with the laundry? Will we try and meal prep for tomorrow? Subtle nudges to try and shape a bit of a routine. Eventually we got a bit of a routine going with a bit more meaning and some activities throughout the week, which was nice. Other things could have been like, an example one was, I was working with someone who was suffering from a lot of fatigue, and I was teaching him about things, if you've heard of the term sleep hygiene, what's the appropriate environment to sleep in that'll help you actually get a good night's sleep, what's the best way to manage fatigue throughout the week. Now this might be a bit unique to this job, because fatigue is extremely common after brain injury, so this line of work, that was quite a lot of my time. I did that with quite a few people. After psychological interventions, outcome measures were quite a big thing in between interventions, and an outcome measure is like sort of like a standardised survey. So the PHQ-9, for example, just stands for Patient Health Questionnaire. It's got 9 questions, and it's usually asking questions in relation to depression and anxiety. So you might have got in terms of, I know a lot of therapists use it, so like before a CBT session start they might do it, and then they might do it after the session, and then if you did 10 weeks of sessions, the result might be compared to see if your score is getting higher, is it getting lower, that sort of thing. Another one would have been neuropsychological assessments, and that was probably the most difficult part of the job. I don't know if anyone's had to do one. It was very hard at first until I got my head around it. So I was taught them, the ones I was doing specifically were to see what were the changes in functioning after the injury, because you can imagine if somebody's had quite a severe brain injury, certain things are going to change, memory's going to change, maybe personality, reaction time, all those sort of things. So the number one I did was called the WAIS, which was essentially very close to an IQ test, but with subcategories. So you're trying to find out what's the person's perceptual reasoning, what is their delayed memory, their things like that, there to see what's been the change since injury, and using that data, well, I didn't use it, my manager used it, to decide, okay, what does this person need, what's been the big change, how can we help, what can be intervened. And it was great to learn how to do, because I've since learned the waste specifically was really widely used. But it was quite intimidating. It's very big and it's a long assessment, so it was quite scary. But I'm very glad I've now learned how to do it. Other wee random things I might have done was, whenever a new service user would come in, there was a lot of, when you're the assistant psychologist, sometimes you are doing like administration tasks per se for your clinical psychologist. So in my case, a lot of it would have been, if somebody new was coming in, I would research the patient's history, maybe look at their MRI report and their CT report from their brain injury, and try and make an assumption of, okay, that the injury happened in this part of the brain, what do I think this person's symptoms are going to be? And it was kind of like a little task he'd set me. Do you know which part of the brain would have done what? And it was kind of his way of teaching me, I think. But it worked really well. It made me learn it very quickly. But then other administration tasks could have been, organising people's calendars and like planning team meetings or minuting meetings and things like that there. So it's not all psychology. Sometimes it's just doing admin tasks, but you'd be surprised that the break can be quite nice. It's not too intense, but most of my day was being in sort of the group rooms, doing activities, doing tasks to help the service users. A lot of those tasks were sort of geared around socialising, introducing people to who have had the same experience, and I think it was really beneficial. People used to love making friends with each other because they all had the same experience, and it's obviously, I don't want to say it's a unique experience because I don't know the statistic of how many people it's happened, but the chance that you're going to meet someone in the shop and have that discussion isn't really there. So the opportunity was always provided, and you see friendship form over time, which was always really nice. And overall, it was a really lovely job, but as an assistant psychologist, all of my work was clinically supervised. So by that I mean, I'm sure you already know this, but like the way they first explained it to me, because I don't think I knew what it meant at first, was that as much as my job is my job, my work is my manager's work. So he's the qualified clinician, I'm working for him, but everything has to be supervised because I'm not qualified to do this by myself. So he had to that meant there was times I would do his corrections on something and he'd have to look at it again before I could actually go do the thing, because it is at the end of the day his work, his license, his but it did mean you got a lot of teaching, a lot of management. Yeah, that's kind of what that is. So my reasons for applying for a master's after this, I was actually applying to other AP roles before I got onto the master's. But then I was talking with, the reason for my choice was I spent a lot of time talking to clinical psychologists, other assistant psychologists, who kind of helped me break down what Louisa would have talked about last week, that when it comes to your doctor application, you're thinking about your academic experience, your clinical experience, and your research experience. And when I broke down what I had, I kind of thought about it that I actually didn't really have any research experience bar my bachelor's dissertation, which you'll all do if you haven't done it already. So I kind of thought about, I knew I wasn't ready to apply for the doctorate, but I thought I should fill that gap as best I can. So my kind of thoughts on it were, when I do a master's of research, I'm going to gain a lot more research experience, a lot more skills, and I'll be able to apply that with my academic experience I'll get from neuroscience and neuropsychology. Kind of reasons for that was really that my last job was in neuropsychology. I really liked it, and I literally wanted to be my supervisor. I loved him. I thought he was just so cool. Everything he just said day to day, I didn't understand a word he said. I had to Google after our conversations what certain words meant, but I just loved every part of neuropsychology. So I thought, I can do my research experience, do something I like, have a better idea, is this the kind of field I want to be in? Yeah, and it's quite, and if anyone's thinking about it, I'm really enjoying it so far. I think it's a good course. And yeah, is anyone any questions? Yeah. Hi.
For your healthcare assistant course, do you think that what experience that you had got you onto the course, what was the most beneficial for that job? Was it your support work?
Which experience was the most beneficial?
To getting onto that job.
Oh, to getting onto the job? Well, I did find in the interview I spoke about that team leader position the most, but it just so happened that this assistant psychologist role needed a lot of the things I was doing. So say, for example, creating a hospital passport, being leading a team, being able to advise a team, things like that there. So in my job a lot was, how do I explain it? Where I worked essentially kind of by myself. So I worked in an office that had daycare workers and social workers and things like that there, and the way my role was kind of was to, if anything psychological was up with the service user, my job was to research it, make sure I understood it, and if we had any team meetings, briefings, was to advise the team, which was something I did quite a lot in the team leader role. So because it was day to day my job to advise and make sure we were staying on the right course and the skills just applied well. But I wouldn't take that away from support working or healthcare assisting, because it does just provide really valuable experience. That's the only way I can put it. It's like, you know, you'll never understand someone more than when you sit with them for 12-hour day, you know? Like if you spend all day with a service user, get to know them better, get to know what their life looks like, and just like what's appropriate to be at work, what should you be talking about, what is empathetic, what isn't, you know, seeing nurses interact with them compared to doctors, compared to social workers, what is a professional way to be in a work environment, and just patient care and skills. And yeah, so that's good. That any answer, anything else? Yeah.
I'm still a little confused on what you did during your healthcare assistant role, because you have to be qualified to provide therapy to clients, so I'm not really sure like what you do with people.
What do you do as a healthcare assistant? Yeah. So a healthcare assistant is also referred to as a nursing auxiliary, if anyone's heard that term instead. That's what it would usually get called. So an auxiliary or a healthcare assistant is just a word that's the nurse's assistant. So, you know, if you think of a nurse on a ward, someone to support her. So things like that. Healthcare assistant isn't always the prettiest role. It can involve a multitude of things: supporting the nurse, doing personal care, sometimes just changing the bedding and cleaning the ward, sometimes being present at something called a one-to-one, if you might be familiar with that term, where you might have a service user who, say, has had risks identified for some reason. I try to think of an example. So say somebody had, or someone who had aggressive behaviour, you might be identified as this person needs one-to-one care, which means they need to be supervised at all times. So as a healthcare assistant, your job might be for that whole day is to just be with that person and keep your eyes on them, chat to them, see how they're doing, sort of try to give their day some meaning, maybe do activities, anything you can think of, help them with toileting or showering if they need it, help them with some big part of healthcare assisting would be helping someone's like feed. So if somebody had a swallowing issue, like this lady just said, you might be involved in just quite literally helping them hold their spoon, helping them, encourage them to sit upright, because, you know, it's like if you swallow like this, you know, some people, you know, obviously you're in pain, you're not worried about your posture, you know, but you might forget that the best way to swallow is like this, especially if you have a swallowing issue. You know, it's important that you're on top of that kind of thing for them. Healthcare assisting is loads of jobs. Sometimes you're a porter, sometimes you're a cleaning lady, sometimes you're sitting with a patient. But it is, I think it's quite essential in even understanding how maybe even a mental health ward works, because, you know, you're not going to be in that environment. If you're not in that environment until you're, say, a clinical psychologist, you'd be quite overwhelmed how many roles are going on, how the ward actually works, you know, what everybody's job is for and why they're there. I just really think it's a great way to understand people and how you should be with people when they are sick or unwell or have a mental health issue. Yeah. So I hope that
helps. As a clinical psychologist, you then work with someone in that role. They are the people that hold the information, not the nursing staff. So nursing staff are busy in the office, they have huge numbers of administrative tasks to do, but it's actually the nursing aides, the healthcare assistants, the support workers who hold the information about the client. So as a clinical psychologist, it's really beneficial to know what their jobs involve, because you're going to be asking them to do more than that. So if I was a clinical psychologist working with Laura, I might say, I've got this suspicion that this person's got such and such a memory problem. Could you just keep an eye out today and see, if you're sitting with them today, could you keep an eye out? And you need to be able to know what that job has to do, because then you can ask them to use realistic parts of their day to test these things out. So if you're worried about somebody's short-term memory, for example, this is a really clunky example. If you're worried about someone's short-term memory, I could say to Laura, after they've had their lunch, give it a couple of, ask them what they've had for their lunch, could you? And I would find out more about that person's short-term memory through using that nursing assistant, the healthcare assistant. So it's a very unappreciated role, but actually the most crucial in terms. Well, the patients appreciate it for sure. But the most crucial in terms of what you learn about patients is the people that spend the most time with them. And nurses would prefer to spend that time, but they just literally can't.
Yeah, I would agree. It's definitely an underappreciated role, but actually any clinical psychologist I met doing the role was always so appreciative, like you said, because they know that this is a person who's been with my service user all day, they have seen them all day, they can ask what changed from lunch to dinner. But also, just even if you were thinking about a CV, for example, if you were in a mental health ward, you have spent a day working with someone with a mental health issue, there's already a psychological application, you've had patient care time, you have seen their environment, you've helped them, maybe if they were having a lack of motivation that day, you've maybe helped them go, oh come on, let's go get dressed, let's get a shower, let's do an activity, let's go outside for a walk, you're sort of seeing everything face to face. I just felt it was, at the time, it didn't feel like it was as beneficial a job because I didn't know enough about clinical psychology, but I even did an interview before I left. The interview I did just before I got into my master's, I actually got the job, but I turned it down. We ended up going I was telling her about my support working experience, and she spent about 10 minutes just like sort of going off, like telling me like how valuable she thought support working was, and how when she was a support worker she learned this, and it turned into a conversation instead of an interview, which was lovely. I'm sure you can imagine when you're in that stressy environment, when someone just chats to you like a person, it's great. And she was just saying how she loves when someone comes in and wants to talk about that, because it is where your sort of core skills get learned, I suppose, most of the time. So I hope that makes sense. Is anyone any other questions? Yes.
I'll be honest, whilst you were talking, I wrote 6 questions, so I don't know if you want.
That's good. Let's go for it, yeah.
If I should just say them all, or...
whatever you want.
Some are more of curiosity as well, so you don't have to answer them. But first one, what mental health wards did you work on?
So I...
secure cams, forensics?
Because I was agency, I had the privilege of working in quite a few, which is why if anyone sees bank posts going, I think they get called in the NHS or agency roles, I felt it was so beneficial because I got to be in so many different places without ever having to have a contract to be there for this X amount of time. So there was times I would be in, so say I was in a brain injury unit in a mental health hospital for about 4 weeks, I was there in acute mental health after that, I was in then strictly dementia and Alzheimer's ward after that. A lot of it was just called acute mental health, or sometimes the ward was just called mental health 1. Things like that there. I was never did CAMS, I've never worked with children or young people, so sorry I can't be helped with that.
Well, the second question was if you think being bank agency disadvantaged you, but I guess you've just said.
No, not at all. Even I've even talked to some of my supervisors about it before, and they said now these are just people I've spoken to, don't take this as like 100% I need to go do what Laura did, because it might not work for everybody, but some people, enjoy the routine of being employed in one place and being there all the time. As much as I've done that, I quite enjoy my time of being in one place this week and one place that week. And I was also, I don't know, I find I'm a bit of like an academic sponge, like I just want to go and learn things and soak it all up, and then when I feel like I've learned something I'll go somewhere else, see what else I can learn. That is just me though, a bit of, I don't know, too much time apparently, that I spend all that time working. But I thought it was beneficial because I saw more in quite a short space of time. But also I found, especially when you're young, it's quite easy. Well, I don't know, I'm sure it's the same when you're a bit older, but I think when you're young, being in an agency contract is quite good, because when you're in university, so say this week you've got an assignment due on Friday, okay, I can't pick up a shift at all this week, I'm too busy. Next week I'm totally free, I could pick up 3 shifts if I want to. You know, the following week I have an exam, I should plan, I'm only doing 1 because I have an exam at the end of that week. So I found it was really flexible. Obviously, when you're not in uni and you need full-time money, it's not as good, but when you're in university, it is a great deal, I think.
Did you ever experience judgment of being a bank support worker or agency? And if so, how do you cope with that? I myself, I'm actually a bank's mental health support worker.
Are you?
In psych wards.
I got it just
I feel like sometimes the people who you support, you just are like, you're just a bank worker.
I didn't get it from the people I support, mostly because I think they knew me so well, because especially, well, if we talk support working only, the service users I had worked with, they had known me from when I got the job when I was 19 till I was 21 and became the supervisor. You know, they knew me very well. So that was a bit of a thing. They always knew I know what was going on in their lives because they knew my face. But whenever I was in as a healthcare assistant in the hospitals instead of, you know, someone's home, I found patients were so used to people coming in and out, because on this day they have doctor so and so, on that day they have this doctor, and that day they have that nurse, and I found they were so used to different people being in and out that, yeah, and sometimes they liked you, and like the patients would say, "You're not coming back tomorrow," and it's like, "Sorry, got another shift somewhere else."
So the assistant psychologist role, I know you said you applied for band 5, but so is that the first like psychologist assistant role you've applied to?
So yeah, I was band 4, so I was band 4 assistant psychologist. The difference is a bit of pay and a slight more responsibility. So sometimes band 5s get called associate psychologists, but they can also be assistants. Usually the word associate to me indicates that they have a bit more responsibility than the assistant. They might be given more tasks, usually because they have more experience.
But you got it the first try.
I did.
Do you have any friends who didn't manage to get an assistant psychologist role first try? I know
quite a few.
Yeah.
Most of my friends who I did my course with aren't working in psychology at the minute. A lot of people got quite frustrated very on, because I'm sure, as you're hearing, psychology can be quite difficult. You know, there are, because I mean, like, you know, it's a very popular subject and there's only so many roles, so you find like a lot of people maybe, it depends how determined you are. I think I've always just been known I wanted to be a clinical psychologist and pushed for it, whereas maybe some people weren't quite sure if that's what they wanted, gave up quite quick. So I know a lot of people who,
I'm only asking because I'm finding it interesting, because the people I know, they've done an undergrad getting a first in it, they've done honorary psychologist role to even begin with, to get on assistant psychologist role, and then masters.
And they're still struggling.
They felt like they had to do both the masters and honorary, which obviously honorary psychologist is unpaid role basically.
This is just my perspective now, so I hope no one takes it like this is absolutely the way. But as much as I've only been one assistant psychologist, I've done 3 job interviews, so I did 2 before I left, and I actually got them both, but I decided the masters was right for me, which was quite exciting. But they both, one was an assistant and one was an associate, and nobody ever asked me about my degree. They just wanted to see I had one. Everybody asked me about my experience. Nobody tell me the theory you learned in your class. I was only ever asked about my skills I learned while working, or, you know, in Kemi's case, while volunteering, because she would have done the same things, but she wasn't getting paid, which isn't great. It's not fun. But your degree is important, because you wouldn't be even considered without your degree. But I've always found people only ever wanted to find out about what I had done at work.
I don't mean to be rude, I just feel like I've heard so many people say how impossible it is. So at the moment, final year, it's like, will I make it out there if I'm hearing people needing to do a master's and honorary psychologist role just to then get a psychologist, like an assistant psychologist?
Unfortunately, I don't know if I can answer.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Sometimes I think people are, I don't want to say people get lucky, because I by no means had luck. Don't get me wrong, it was lucky I got the interview, but I still had to, you know, convince the person on the interview panel that I was right for the job because I had done X, Y, and Z. That makes sense. So it is just a matter of, Like, I mean, if you look at Kemi got it first time out of uni, you know, but she worked hard while she was in uni. Sometimes it is a case of one day a week during uni actually makes a whole year of experience, and there you go, I have a year to talk about in an interview.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to interrupt and say it's really dangerous making generalisations, because I can tell you about 15 or 20 students that I've been very close to in all of their, you know, in their third year, and then what they've done afterwards, and it's been very, very difficult to say. Like one who would make an excellent assistant wasn't successful at getting an assistant's post and has gone down a different route as well. But and another who just decided she was going to do clinical psychology after doing 6 months support work in an NHS hospital after her degree, and is now an AP and applying for the doctorate. So it's so disparate. And what I'd say is there's always going to be some people that get on, but there are going to be some people who don't. So it may not be the person who hasn't got on, or people, it may not be because it's not fair, but it may be because they may not have what's required for it at the moment. So I would think you need to think about it in that way rather than think it's so difficult and no one can do it, because people do. Like, we've got 40 odd of them in my building today. So people do get on, people do get the AP roles, and people do get onto the doctorate, and I would keep that in your mind rather than is it going to be worth it if it's what you really, really want to do. Otherwise, what I always suggest is create a parallel career path. So like either of these could go into research now, for example.
Yeah, so I didn't mean to overgeneralize. It just, I've heard so many, you know, when you hear bad things and you're like, oh, is this really what I'm getting into? Years of trying to apply and getting rejection.
I guess that's why we've got APs coming in, we're going to have PWPs coming in, we're going to have trainees coming in. So you hear the other side of it as well. And the success stories about people who have done, you know, who've taken a certain path and they've had to make decisions about it. We had a guy last year who was an assistant psychologist who was in his 40s, and he'd had 3 career changes before he decided to use his psychology degree for that. So, it was really interesting to hear how he kind of made that decision to do it. So I'd just say, and I was 30 before I got on the doctorate, so it's, you know, never say never. It's all, you know, there's, but it's realistic to query whether you really want to spend all that time doing it. Especially, unfortunately, for women, because we run out of time to have children while we're pursuing this, so it's rather unfair for us.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, sorry.
No, you're fine. That's great advice, actually. Yeah, best thing to think about it is there isn't a straight path. What has worked for me and worked for Kemi is different. Any assistant psychologist I know has done different things. They've maybe all done a few similar things, but usually there isn't just one way. So yeah, but it's best thing about that, like that. People do get onto it. You know, it is just a bit of work in between, but it's okay. It's all good experience, it's all good to know, and it's all prepping you for the end job that you'll get, you know, if you think about it like that. It'll all be relevant one day, you know. Can I answer anything else? Hi.
I was wondering, how can we also get jobs in mental health hospitals as well? Will we need prior work experience to do that, to get a job?
So in mental health hospitals here, I can't really speak for because I've not worked in the NHS in England, but in my experience, the reason I actually got a healthcare assistant job straight away was because while I was a support worker for one place, I used to pick up shifts within the same company in an elderly residential home. Now, I know that doesn't sound quite the same, but the roles and responsibilities were that more of a healthcare assistant and less of a support worker. So I had the appropriate things when I went to an interview for an agency. They were like, you're a support worker, not a healthcare assistant. And it's like, okay, but at work day to day, I do this, this and this. So it just so happened that I had the experience. Normally, I don't know, normally I'd say you would be better off applying for maybe a part-time job first, especially if you're in uni. You don't want to be doing a full-time job during your degree. It's very hard to manage, I wouldn't recommend. But I'm sure there's no harm in applying, and if you don't, I think a good way to think about it is even if you do an application and an interview and don't get it, you've practiced your interview skills, you've practiced your application skills, you've learned something at the end of it. I think that's a good way to think about it. Yes. Sorry, were you raising your hand?
No. So obviously working in some of these wards, you would have come across some people with potentially quite serious mental health conditions. And you spoke about the person with the seizure. And I know you said you handled that well, but I was just thinking while you were saying that, me personally, that would really throw me off.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering if you had any advice on how best to manage witnessing anything distressing as such, so as to not compromise your ability to fulfill the role effectively.
I was actually talking about this with my friend on the way here, which is quite funny because she sat over there and she asked me the same question. It's funny, now I think people are different, and I can only speak from the way I am, but before I was in any of these situations that were quite intense, when I was the supervisor and I was the one who had to make decisions when the manager wasn't there, I had a certain amount of experience that got me, maybe, I don't want to say used to disaster, but used to different situations and things I wouldn't see at home. I don't know how to explain it, because whenever I was in that particular scenario, I don't know how to explain it in that, like, I just went into work mode and this needs sorted, this woman needs help, some of the services are really upset, they need to speak to me, they need consoling, my staff are freaked out, I need to talk to them, they need debriefing after that, I can't let them go home, and I just all of a sudden had a list in my head of this needs sorted, that needs sorted, that needs sorted. Don't get me wrong, when I went home that night I was a bit like, God, I'm tired, you know, but my personal way is, I was just talking about this earlier, is after work, especially in those kind of shifts, I always made a big effort to either be at the gym or go swimming specifically, personally, because I like both, and I always found if I went for a swim, all you're thinking about is breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, so your head isn't thinking about what you just did at work because you're swimming, if that makes sense. That was kind of like, we like described it earlier as my like kind of life hack for that kind of thing, and the gym especially, obviously it's even sort of medical, you're releasing endorphins that are creating dopamine in your body, they do help. And I would know, anyone I've known who's worked in mental health has said very similar things, that kind of having something to come home and do, kind of you do forget about it. Not that you forget about it because I've just told you about it, but you don't go home thinking about it all night, you know, you're not waking up thinking about it again the next morning. But it's kind of, when you're in these kind of jobs, it's like you nearly build up a sort of sense of, you just get used to kind of different things happening day to day, and it slowly just starts to become a part of work, just in the way someone who's filling out an email every day, or not this every day, that every day. That's mine, but I'm thinking maybe Louisa has a good...
I was just going to say, there's a few things to think about. Is when you go into very challenging roles, you're trained to deal with those. And if you're not trained, you get out of that organisation as quickly as you can. You don't stay in an organisation when you're at risk and other people are at risk. Those types of events are always very, very unpleasant, so you want some kind of way of debriefing, usually with a manager, a supervisor. And again, if you don't have that on tap, I would reconsider the job, because you want to keep yourself physically and psychologically safe when you're doing those things. So that's one thing I'd say, that's the actual, like the training and supervision part of it. The other thing is, as you're going towards working towards to be a clinical psychologist, there will be areas you don't want to work in, and you shouldn't think that you have to. You might end up with a 6-month placement somewhere you don't want to be and you hate every moment of it, but you don't have to do that the rest of your life. So I would just say that there are client groups I wouldn't work with. I wouldn't work with children. When I did my training, my children were very, very young, and it was an absolute nightmare doing my child placement. I wouldn't do it. I can't stand the risk. I can't stand I find it more sad than I do working with people at the end of their life. But everybody's very, very different. So I would just say that, you know, it's worth having a job like that in a way to see how you respond to it, and then you'll know more how you want to go through your career as a clinical psychologist. But just to say, if you find that sort of situation really uncomfortable and too challenging, that doesn't preclude you from being a clinical psychologist. It means that you need some understanding of yourself, great appreciation of the people that can manage it, but you're more suited to somewhere else, so you'll help people better in different things. Does that make yes?
You can see she's a psychologist, she does great advice, I'm telling you. You answer it way better. Can I help anybody else? Anything else? Hi.
I just wanted to add on that, if that's okay, but honestly sometimes it is knowing if it's too challenging, go away, but it does get easier. I'm saying that from my experience, because I worked at Signet for over a year, so that is full on psych ward. And honestly, if you asked me the first month I was in, not ashamed to say I left work crying because I thought I'm not making it. But over time, you start looking at how those people progress. And it can be as simple as they make you a bracelet and you think, you know what, I'm having a positive impact in this person's life. And you do love it. And even if you don't, it doesn't have to be psych ward. There's a lot of like community, like help as well that you can go on.
Yeah. I mean, I actually said to a friend recently who was applying for her first support worker job, she actually said to me, I don't think I'm cut out for it, and my answer to her was the fact that you chose a degree to help people with their mental health problems makes me already know that you're capable of it. You know, the fact that probably, maybe so, to be fair, I picked this degree because I was interested in it. I didn't know what I wanted at the start. It obviously then evolved into I want to be a clinical psychologist, but the fact that that's your career path you're pursuing to help people, you're probably more capable than you think, you know, and you have a great understanding of the way, maybe why someone's mental health issue makes them the way they are, which some people might not, which is also a great benefit. You can come at it from a really empathetic standpoint of someone suffers with this, that's because this neuron or this hormone isn't doing what it's supposed to do, that's not their fault, but that's the way they're thinking, you know. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah,
I think
it does. It sort of makes sense in that the other thing with your academic background is that you can take a step back because you're learning why people behave in the way they behave. That's what your whole degree is about. And it might seem really abstract right now. I can remember even in my third year thinking, is this seriously psychology, is it? And it wasn't until past my doctorate that I actually pulled all those things together. But you're going to learn more and more models of human behaviour. Why do people help in the way they're helping? Why is this healthcare assistant doing this thing that we think is unhelpful? Why are they doing that thing? And you're going to develop all of these models, which takes you a step away from the awful behaviour that you're seeing. But so what if you can manage that? You've got this advantage of being able to step back and think, right, why then? Why? So what's going on here? Because all behaviour is understandable at some level or other. And we're in a really good position, and it gets really exciting in clinical psychology to start trying to work that out. Basically, is why is that? What's going on here? What's somebody do? Why is somebody doing this thing right now? So yeah, there's that academic side to it as well, which I missed.
Yeah, I think it's super relevant. Understanding why someone does what they're doing, it makes a big difference. That is all I can say. But has anyone got any other questions? Hiya.
Would you say it's beneficial to do like a Master of Research rather than just a normal Master's?
For everyone it's different. So for me, the reason I picked a Master's of Research was because I was lacking research skills. So that is really the core reason why I picked it. Other people might want a Master's of Science. I know the clinical health one, there's probably maybe a bit more applicable knowledge, or maybe learning a bit more about theories of behaviour, and maybe that's what you want for your own CV per se. Maybe your own future doctoral application, you're thinking about, should I have this or this? So I suppose it's just different in what you have already and what you think you need to fill out the role. But since working, the best way I've thought about it is I spoke with my managers before I applied for the Masters, and when I told them I got it, they thought it was the right choice for me and my career path. But it's different for everyone. I think if you're doing a Masters, as much as you want to do it good for your CV, I think you want to pick something you like too. I really like neuro, but some people might hate it and go, why did I bother, you know? So I think picking what you like is always important too, if that helps.
I'm going to bring proceedings to a close now. I would add to that when you get onto the doctorate, you will get brought to a level playing field. So some people will come with huge amounts of clinical experience, and if you arrive the only person with a PhD, you can think, oh God, I've wasted my life for 3 years. But the purpose of the doctorate is to bring everybody in so that everyone uses that same standard of research. Thank you very much, Laura. Right, well, I found that really, really interesting, actually, and thank you very much for coming. I'm just having a quick look in my diary to see what is coming up next, and oh well, I know when it is. It's the 27th of November, but I can't remember exactly what I've got in the slot. So look on the Blackboard page. Get in touch with me if you want me. I've just realised I'm not even sure where my email is, but I always assume that people are going to know it for some reason. So if you have any questions, if they're all the same questions, I'll end up putting them on a discussion board. But if you want me, or if you want to present at one of these, or talk about anything that the presenters have brought up, please get in touch with me, louisa.shirley@manchester.ac.uk, and hopefully I'll see you at the next one. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I didn't know you did research. I didn't realize that.
No, we're lucky in that regard. Like, now you've made a really good choice of what you did this year. The mind voluntary. You really made a really good decision with that. So hopefully I can step up my game. Can you just a little bit? I'm gonna, but hopefully I can get some into the sport as well.
Yeah, I mean, you can always apply for the same one if you
I think I'll try, yeah.
It's fun, it's kind of like, you can like put in color and shit. I definitely recommend.
And the best advice I ever got is, you should just be applying here, there, and everywhere, because you're going to be doing that. Your friends, your family, and right away, at least, you want to be here. So, kind of so you're ready. So even I didn't go apply next year. Like, I want to be in there. My end goal will always be that. If that makes sense. Well, you know one thing, I am kind of a bit strong. I feel like maybe, not talking shit, just keep the beat concise and get some information.
Yeah, I just felt bad. I feel like, in a non-rude way, it felt very weird, that both of you got the AK roll straight up when everyone from mine wore it.
I just just a bit of I started working in second year and until 2 years after. That's a full 2 years working in between. So from graduating to that, I feel
like more came out of fear. They wanted to be personal attacks. I feel like I've been told, for example, masters I thought where am I going in? I'm not going to make it. Everyone's saying I'm too competitive. Like, if am I wasting time?
I got to go 16 hours smart enough to pass analysis and like businesses. So I would say don't take everything people say with a salt.
I got told I couldn't get into it.
Exactly. So being determined is important.
I feel like I just wanted to know. I know there are
it's kind of like knowing what else you can do.
It's nice to know that people do have a positive experience as well of getting it.
I nearly gave up before I got mine.
As soon as you mentioned the SCN system, I was like, because I have a friend who does it, so I was that's like my first.
I was keeping up with that. I can't imagine how hot you were. I was like sweating
No, I enjoyed that so much. Is it painful?
When I started, no, not really. I think when I started,
I was thinking a lot about it as well. I was thought a lot about it as well. Difficult to answer it.
It's just like I really needed it. But like I knew I didn't have enough research skills and I could have got a research assistant job and develop research skills, but I wanted to be really needed.
Yeah.